Welcome to the Legends of Baseball show on the Gruber Truth Sports Network. The Baseball Legends show is brought to you by Replenishing Technologies, the future of sports medicine. If you want to learn more about Replenishing Technologies, go to thegruelingtruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page. It'll take you there. I'm your host for the Legends show, Mike Goodpaster, and it's an honor for me to have a guest today that was a two-time All-Star, won a World Series in 1992 with the Toronto Blue Jays. Help me welcome to the Grueling Truth, Kelly Gruber. How you doing, Kelly?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Now, I did a little research. I remember you when you played. I didn't know any of your background or anything, but how did you end up being a baseball player going to Austin Westlake High School?
Well, my first love was football, of course. You know, being in the state of Texas, that's kind of the religion here. And, you know, I played them all, Mike. I was in tennis. I did track. I played basketball, you know, football, baseball. So I stayed pretty busy, which is probably good for me. And, you know, my dad he saw something, I guess, in baseball and said, yeah, we might have something here. And he stayed after it. And, of course, you know, it was probably the least sport I liked the most because there was just not a lot of action as in basketball, as in, you know, football and what have you. There was a lot more standing around, so my mind would wander off quite a bit, and, you know, it was a little tough for me to focus and to stay in the game with all that dead time in between pitches and this and that, but stuck with it, really with no choice, you know, because of my father, and he really wanted me to play it, and I did, and it worked out.
Now, when was the first time you realized that maybe I can do more with this than just play in high school?
Well, you know, to be honest, I was truly blessed from the Lord above there. It was nothing that I did. You know, when it came to athletics, it didn't matter what it was. I seemed to do pretty well, and so I had that going on my side. And but it wasn't until I really took it serious, and I was already knee-deep playing baseball. And, you know, I said I could be a whole lot better than I am now, because just because I'm an athlete doesn't mean I'm a baseball player. I had to learn to be a baseball player, and there's a lot more thinking and what have you. And anytime you put the mind with the body, then they seem to both work a lot better. And I think it was probably around 88. Once I got my really good shot there when Rance Molnix went down, and they had already traded Garth Orge, so I knew I was locked in as platoon, but I didn't really realize, you know, the potential that sat within me until I started working at it. And once I started working at it and figuring out the game of baseball and what it took, what it was wanting from me, and I plugged myself in, you know, it started coming around, and I became a baseball player.
Yeah, and the thing that's scary, you talked about that, naturally gifted athletes a lot of times don't ever come to that realization and never achieve what they could. I've coached high school football for 30 years and coached professional football for the last 5 or 6 before I started doing this. And the thing that stood out to me is just the mind-boggling amount of kids that have all this God-given physical ability that never learn that they have to work at some point.
Well, I think that's because, bottom line, it comes easy. You know, when it comes easy, what do I need to work for? What do I need to try? It's good enough. And, you know, and I think at some point you realize, too, that it's okay to stare at defeat in the face, looking silly, stretching yourself a little too far, trying a little too much, and so forth, you know. And I figured if I put in the time, then I don't get any better. Then it's going to be one of these deals where it just, what's the point? What's the purpose? And don't forget, we're young kids then, and what do you want to do when you're a young kid? You want to go out and hang out with the other young kids and goof off and have fun and, no pressure. So I think, a combination of those things probably which will keep people from really putting their self forward and plugging themselves in.
All right, now, you got drafted by the Cleveland Indians organization, which was not one of the better ones back in the early 80s. You went to the New York Penn League. I know you had a rough first season there. What was that transition like for you?
Well, I was a Texan going up to upstate New York, number one. That transition's pretty daunting. I hardly ever went north of the Colorado River here in Austin, and it was life-changing. I was on my own. Responsibility was dropped upon me. I had to grow up pretty quick. It was not my hometown fans who loved me, whether I made an error or whether I didn't. And, they were demanding a lot of high, accurate things from me because I was a first round 10th pick of the nation, but I was not coming out of college where I had 2, 3 years, 4 years behind me that gave me that experience, gave me that being of like dependent and took a hold of things and did the things I was supposed to, responsible and what have you. So it was pretty tough. I remember one time, well, it wasn't one time, I remember the first time especially, that I had a really good live arm, and a good arm and a live arm, and two different things. But a live arm, my ball would take off. I had such whip on it, and the snap of my release point that I had a lot of rotation on the ball, and my ball seemed to take off on me. And from short, that's not good. You want the ball straight. Well, it would sail over the first baseman's head quite a bit. And they became showing up there at the ballpark, the fans behind home base with trash can lids. So every time they'd hit me the ball, I'd throw the trash can lids. And, of course, that was a major, major distraction. Did nothing for the confidence. And, it was a deal I had to go through. But it was pretty crazy, I'll tell you. I was used to being home, and I didn't do a whole lot as a kid. I didn't travel much, especially on spring breaks and different things with the other students because I was too busy trying to hone my game, what I thought was honing my game, but I was just direly out on the field sweating when it was my off time, waiting to get it over with. I was probably not putting in the mental work as far as how much physical work I was doing out on the field at that time.
Yeah, and you talk about the throw from short to first. When did you switch to being a third baseman, and whose idea was it?
Well, I believe it was Toronto's idea. They had looked at me when I was in high school, and I believe they had like the second, third pick of the nation at that time, and they picked some kid from California, I believe it was, and it never panned out. And they passed me up, and then Cleveland got me. But they had said, well, Kelly was just taken off the 20. I think it was the 40-man. Yeah, the 40-man roster, and that's when they picked me up the Rule 5 draft. And they said, he's had a little problem, I guess, if I'm trying to read behind closed doors, that at shortstop. And I think he would be a really good third baseman. We should nab him, Rule 5, and move him to third. And it's exactly what they did. I was down actually in the country of Colombia, and I was playing ball. The last year they let Americans play there from Pablo Escobar, starting his escapades with all the travelers through the mountain passes and taking them hostage and killing them. We missed that about 2.5 weeks. They had our season was done, thank goodness. But that's when I think they saw it. I was in a bus riding that across the mountain pass there down to Cartagena to play a team on the coast. And before we left, we picked up a 3-year-old Miami Herald and saw that I had been taken off the 40-man roster. And here I was missing Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, a whole ball of wax, and just terribly missing home. It was my off time, my 3.5 months. I had to go home and rest and see everybody. But no, I was there in Colombia, and just not very much liking it, And then I had a manager. His name was Jose Martinez. He played. I believe he played ball, but he was the first baseman coach for the Kansas City Royals for a while. So I took the paper up and I showed him, and I told him I wanted off the bus and I wanted to go home because they had no plans. No. He already knew that Al Lamacchia and Bobby Maddock was on their way up to Colombia to watch me play to see if they were going to indeed draft me for that Rule 5, and they did. Shortly after, Jose talked me into staying, and boy, am I thankful I listened that time.
Yeah, and it had to be kind of intimidating to go to a new situation, even though it was probably something that was kind of refreshing for you. But you go to training camp with a new team in the Toronto Blue Jays. When you got there, though, you talked about guys like Rance Molinex, Garth Orge. Did these guys kind of take you under their wing and help you?
That wasn't very customary back then. The old school, I was kind of on the cusp of the old school changing of the guard to the new school, and it's totally new school now. But so I saw both sides of the fence, and nobody likes to go move and then as a kid have to go to a new school and, this and that. It was kind of the same route. And but you said refreshing, and I thought, well, because I remember Jose told me before I left Colombia after the season, he said, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to pick you up, and the Cleveland Indians put you on the AAA roster from the 40-man. And now, if Toronto picks you up, Kelly, he said, then they have to put you on the big league roster. So you're going to the big leagues. And that just was like music in my ears at the same time. I was shaking in my boots, scared to death. Oh, the big leagues. Oh no. It's exactly what I was wanting to do. Now it was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Hang on. But they ended up doing just that. And Rance Molinex and Garth Orge couldn't have been better at accepting somebody that was being drafted or had been drafted and was being groomed to take their job. It was remarkable. It was the most unbelievable thing I think I've ever experienced, was that they would actually help me to get better so that I would hurry to take their job. Not that that's what they were trying to do, but they were just they're fantastic people. And, I think that's the kind of teammates that were on that club back then. It wasn't just thinking about themselves. It was thinking about the team, and we had a whole handful of them, and there could have been nobody else better than Rance and Garth, and also the rest of the team to accept somebody like me coming in, a new blood, and don't know who he is, but I was sure appreciative and thankful for it.
Yeah, and that was a team that was loaded because in '85 they make it to the ALCS, and then of course you win a World Series in '92, made the playoffs a couple times in between there. But you made your major league debut April 20th, 1984 at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. You were injured, didn't tell anybody about it. You actually ended up in AAA Syracuse that year because of the injury after they'd worked out a deal with Cleveland for you. And you got a late September call-up, and you got your first hit off Al Nipper. I think it was at Fenway Park, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were getting our, you know what, screamed. And so they decided, let's bring in the moppers, let them mop it up and get the starters off the field so they don't get too much of their ego busted from getting beat up so bad. So we all ran in there, and I got my chance, and he threw me from what I remember, he threw me a 3-2 slider up 8-9 runs. I don't know what it was. I mean, just getting killed late in the game, like the 8th inning or something. And it was like, all I could hear from the stands in Fenway Park was Gruber, Gruber. They don't pronounce their R's a whole lot in Boston, and they said Gruber, and they were chanting, and I guess upon the scoreboard, because Jerry Howarth had told me after the play-by-play, he told me after, he said, Kelly, did you hear the fans? And I said, yeah. It was it kind of made me mad because I thought they were ridiculing me, trying to bust my chops or, but no, they put up on the screen saying that Kelly Gruber was looking for his first major league hit. And he said those fans with the Red Sox are so traditionally rich that they love seeing firsts. And they were actually, because they were winning, no doubt.
If it was 1-0, they wouldn't have liked it that much.
Exactly. They wouldn't have been chanting me on, I'll tell you. And, sure enough, I connected and went around the bases, came back to the dugout, and they actually called me out for a curtain call in Boston. It was like, wow. It felt like I was playing for the whole league at that point, not just for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and in 1988, you became a Blue Jay regular. I think in 89, you became the first Blue Jay to hit for the cycle.
Correct.
And that had to be a special moment because there's not too many guys that ever do that.
No, I understand it's the rarest feat in baseball, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, what about perfect game? I mean, I only go up 4 or 5, I guess 6 times at the most, and to pitch a perfect game would have, to me, is like every pitch you're involved in. That would be much more difficult, but yeah, it was a strange thing, Mike. I'll tell you, I came up, I think I had a home run, I had a double, I had a triple, I don't know how many RBIs, and I must have had a week. Felt like not a good day, but a good week that day, and I was feeling pretty good my last time up. I wasn't nervous. I felt in place for once. I felt needed. I felt appreciated, all those good things. And all of a sudden I get out on deck and I hear this, okay, Kelly boy, all you need is a single. And my body nearly dropped to the turf. And it was like, holy cow, what are these guys? They don't like what I've done now and they want more. I'll never please these people. I got to ask to be traded. And sure enough, I get up there and I hit that blooper, a little Texas leaguer, and I had no earthly idea what a cycle was. And thank goodness, because I probably would have choked it. It's like, all you need is a single. Come on. You try too hard and you fall on your face. Well, that wasn't the case here because I had no idea what the cycle was. So I hit the Texas leaguer. I'm looking at it as I'm running to first, and I'm talking to it like the ball can hear me. It has ears. And I'm saying, get down, get down, get down, get on the ground, give me a hit. You take them hits and any way you can get them. And it wasn't pretty, and it fell. Well, I went, oh, geez, I must be about, I don't know, halfway down to first, and I'm thinking, man, where's first? I hadn't even looked at first, and I'm running to first, right, watching the ball, talking to it. And I saw myself, it was almost like I was running to the second baseman playing kind of in the hole towards first. Out of the baseline, I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. So I ditched it to the right towards first base. Now I'm way off line. I should be already at first with the line that I'm taking towards first now. I should be already there rounding first, heading for second. And because that was such a big part of my game, was even those kinds, don't watch them, don't talk to them, they can't hear you. Don't, just run. Run as hard as you can, straight lines, at least amount of steps, and get as many bases under you as you can. That way, if they drop it, then you're not just sitting on first or walking back to the dugout because you're mad you popped it up. If they drop it, you're going to be on second. You're going to be in scoring position. That's how you beat people. That's how that's that effort control that we have. We can't control anything else. We can control our effort. Well, there I was doing that, and I hit first, and I put on the Jets now, and Billy Smith was the first baseman at first, and Billy knew that I was looking for the cycle, because he started screaming at me when he saw me running really, really hard, because the ball hit the ground, bounced way up in the air on the turf, as it did at Exhibition Stadium, and I was going second, and he was screaming at me, "No, stop, right here, stop, at first, and I did, kind of thinking, well, geez, Billy, you don't really know me. I can run, what are you doing, stopping me? And he come over and shook my hand, and I get a standing ovation, and I'm going, that was the worst hit I had all day, and these people are standing ovation with me and clapping, and everybody shaking my hand. It's like, what are these people doing? Like, they don't really know the game of baseball up here, up north, up here, like, and it was just a very weird moment. And they said, no, you hit for the cycle. And of course, I played it off like, oh yeah, okay. I'm a cycle. What's the cycle? And I thought he called me like a psycho, Don't be a psycho running to second. Listen, whatever. And it was a really weird moment, Mike. And I was the first, and then Fry came in, and it's something weird that happened was, I don't know, this was 10, 11, 12 years later. I came back to Toronto for alumni deal, and I'm at the automotive building on C&E grounds, and I'm signing autographs with, I don't know, Tom Hinkie, Jimmy Key. There's a bunch of us from back then, and had a big whoop-de-doo there at the stadium after. Well, they called us up and said, you got to get Gruber down here at the ballpark. Fry is fixing to hit for the cycle. And so they scooped me up, they put me in the car, took me down there, and I went down by the dugout there, and I waited, and he came up, and he got his single and had me run out on the field. But what are the chances? I wasn't back to Toronto. I bet for about 8-10 years after I got out of baseball, because I had the surgery on my neck, and it was a long haul, and I was tired, and I was glad to be home, and so on and so forth. Well, I happened to be in Toronto the day that the only other guy hit it at a cycle, and I was out, and I ran across the field and shook his hand, and that kind of thing, ran back off the field. But what a strange event to unfold, that I would just happen to be there.
Yeah, and that was early in the 1989 season, and the Blue Jays had never fired a manager in the middle of the season. At 12-24, you guys replaced your manager, Jimmy Williams, with Cito Gaston, the first black manager in the history of the franchise. And you guys kind of took off from there. You want to talk a little bit about playing for Cito Gaston and what he did to change the culture of that ball club in 1989?
Sure. I loved Jimmy. I loved him to death. He was funny. He had a great personality. He knew tons about the game of baseball. He probably taught me as much as anybody ever about the game of baseball. All those times I was on the bench, I wasn't playing early on, he would have me meet him early. And he would hit me ground balls, and he would teach me the happy feet. Don't be so lazy with the feet. Get them going, get them moving. The simple things, the little things that help momentum, take the wear and tear off of arms and different things of that nature, get your whole body moving towards your target, not just throw with all arm. And just so much he taught me, and I'm so appreciative to him for that. And I liked him. I was glad to see, because we'd built a really good relationship, and now he's manager. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll get some playing time, a little more playing, whatever. But, he ended up getting fired. There was a dissension between him and a lot of the players. There's 2, 3, 4 players that just would not play. They would not play. They told him before Jimmy got the job that they would not play if he got the job. And so that's what was going on. And it was really sad to see. It was not a lot of fun. And that's not what we're there for. I don't care who the manager is, who the coaches are, who your teammates. You're there being paid to play baseball. Go play baseball. Nothing should stop that. And, he left, and here comes Cito, interim manager. And, of course, thought the world of Cito, too. He's from San Antonio, down here about 160 miles from where I'm at in Austin. And, he is the kind of guy, as I found out, as he was my hitting coach, but also as a manager, which a lot of times, that's 2 different callings, and that they're wanting something different, because their job description is different, so they change. Well, Cito didn't. Cito is still Cito. We call him a player's manager. He called himself an open door manager. And, it was a deal where he promised every one of us, you go out and you play your game. Whether you win or lose, whether you do great or bad, you play. And that's all I ask for. And if I see that you're not playing and putting out, I hear that you're out on the town, beating the pavement up, at all hours, and come dragging up, trying to play and can't, then you will hear from me. And that's the only time you'll hear from me. And sure enough, that was the case in point. We went out, we played, and we turned it around 360 completely, and we couldn't lose when he took interim manager, because those other players started playing, and they were good players. And of course, all we kept hearing as we were playing was Cito in the papers, oh, I can't wait to become the hitting coach again, get out of this managerial job. And, I just want to be the hitting coach. And so finally, I think I took it upon myself. I just got upset with it and said, no. Look at the way we're playing. Look at that. We can't lose. I said, nobody's going to mess with this. Nobody's going to back out in this. We're set. We're rolling. And nobody's going to break it. We're going to continue doing what we're doing with the same people and the same way we're doing it. Well, I checked with some of the players. I said, hey, do you guys mind if I go in there and tell Cito he's our manager and he's not going to stop being our manager, or I'll quit, I think is what I told him when I finally went in there and told him that. And, oh, Kelly, I'm a hitting coach. I don't want to be a babysitter. I don't want to be a manager. I just want to be the hitting coach, and he got real comfortable with that. And he was really, really good at that. Well, I got a manager I really liked, and I got a hitting coach I really liked, all in one. And that's pretty cool. Plus, I got another hitting coach behind him who took his job officially, Gene Tennis. Now I got 2 hitting coaches. How can that be bad for me? It wasn't. So I said, well, Cito, we see that you're talking about wanting to get out of here and just be the hitting coach for Toronto out of this manager's job. And I said, I'm here to tell you, the whole team's voice is speaking. It's, you cannot leave. You cannot drop the manager's job and go back to hitting. If you leave manager's job, I'll quit. I'll walk off the field. I'll ask to be traded. You can find somebody else to play third in a bit. A lot of these other players will do the same thing. It's not broke, Cito. Don't fix it. And he still tells me this day it's probably one of the best decisions he ever made. And thanks to me coming in there. And I just, you know what? I like having fun. Fun was all what it was all about. And when you win, you had a lot more fun. And, you know, I didn't want to see that disturbed in any way. So I just went in there and talked to him about it. But Cito was the best. I'm going to tell you, I couldn't have been blessed more than having played with the Blue Jays in Toronto, the best, I think, big city in North America, hands down. For the Canadian people, a one-nation team, Cito is my manager, Gino is my hitting coach. I mean, we had so many great coaches on that squad coming through there. Teammates, I don't think it could have even been close to being better anyway.
Yeah, and in 1989 and 90, you make the All-Star game. I mean, it had to really be special to make the All-Star team and go play with guys that you were watching growing up.
Yeah, it was. It was at the same time scary, though. You know, I mean, I guess we always said, if you're not nervous when you first start the game or before the game or, you know, then you're just not normal. And that never goes away. It never goes away, no matter how many games you play, where we played 162 and 175 days. So we're busy. You don't have time to get scared. You don't have time to get nervous. You don't, you know, but you do. And, you know, that's just normal for every young player out there. It's just normal. And, that's what happens. If you didn't, then you wouldn't be normal. You're probably not giving forth your part towards the sport, you know, and or whatever else you do. But yeah, that's about what we talked about earlier, Mike, when I, you know, decided, hey, once you put forth the effort physically here, once you put forth the effort mentally, learn the game. What are these people trying to throw you? What do they know about you? They know me now. They're good enough to live in that zone where they know I can't handle it. And until I adjust and realize that's what they're doing and work on hitting that pitch in that zone that I'm having trouble with, that I keep seeing, I'm not going to get any better. And that's about when it all turned around for me. And was watching some films and paying attention. I took my own notes about every pitch of every at-bat. After my at-bat, I'd come back and I'd write it down in my little journal thing. The situation, the counts, how many outs, the score, who it was. And I began to see a pattern in how these guys were throwing me. I began to understand what Gino and Cito were telling me when I was up at the plate. And these things, I'd watch the films and I'd see my elbow drop. I couldn't feel my elbow drop or my back shoulder drop or swing underneath the ball until I started watching the films, applying myself mentally and learning the game of baseball and how to adapt and how to see what's going on, what they're trying to do, and now attack them on that end and take that part away from them. Then what are they going to throw me? They can't throw me what I like. They can't throw me what was working because I've adapted and learned how to hit that pitch. So it really broadened out my game and made me an all-star.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me is this. When I first contacted you about the interview, I always go and I check out the stats. And when I looked at your stats, it was like, for your career, 117 home runs and 443 RBIs. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened here? Because it was a while back, and I didn't really remember about the injury situation. But I was trying to figure out how your stats were just what they were. And then when I start digging, I start remembering the injuries. And in 1991 into 1992, I mean, the injuries really bogged down your career and eventually ended your career. And when you look at 1992, which was maybe the greatest season the Blue Jays ever had, it was one of the toughest for you.
It really was. I found myself on the training table before games after working out, getting ready for the game, crying like a little baby, not knowing how I'm going to get up off that table and go play and meet that challenge. And I knew my teammates needed me. I knew the fans. I knew but it was difficult, and I don't know how I did it, Mike. I really don't. But I played it so hard. They said I was a football player playing baseball. I think Jerry Howarth and Tom Cheek and some of those, they always said things like that on the radio, apparently, that I heard. But I played it hard, and I feel like a bag of bones now, believe me, at 56. And, that's the only way that I knew. I knew I could control my effort. And if I didn't give 100% of my effort, I couldn't live with myself, much less anybody else. And, it's one thing that we can control in the game. So I really put the gravy on it, and it came off that field spent every time and feeling accomplished, whether we won or lost. And it was very difficult. At 30 years old, I was done. I got up there, what did you say? I got up there in 84 for 2.5 months. I don't know, a handful of at-bats. I got up in 85, a handful of at-bats, September call-up. 86, I didn't play a whole lot. I didn't really start playing. I have 4 or 5 max, whole solid years playing, getting the opportunity to play. So my stats wouldn't be that high because, it takes numbers. It takes at-bats to build stats. Regardless of however many times you're successful or not, you got to have at-bats. And that's what builds the numbers, and I just didn't have all those. And then, of course, I went down at age 30, which is way too soon, way too soon. But, I always look back, even though it's kind of one of those grimace points, and it's like, man, what a bummer, I was genetically built. I didn't have to worry about my weight or this or that, and then, it was just something that happened. But my saving grace, I look back, is like, well, everybody goes out at some point. Everybody's done at some point. And I was done, for all intended purposes, at 92, even though I went to the Angels in 93, and I didn't play but 17 games in the big leagues. I was rehabbing a shoulder I blew out when I dove for Sanders on that triple play. And there was a lot of injuries that nobody knew about because I just did not want the other team to know so they could pound me harder. And, and then, of course, I probably thought, well, I don't want people to think I'm making excuses or, the fans or whatever. So I just kept it quiet except to the training people. But my saving grace was I looked back and I thought, well, everybody's going out. Doggone it, I left 92 with the World Series ring. What better way to leave and be out of the game than that way?
And you had a huge impact on that World Series. I couldn't stand the Braves just because of their fans, and I still remember after, I think, was it Game 2? You cut the last out and gave him the Tomahawk Chalk. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
You had the triple play on Deion Sanders that should have been a triple play, and then later in that game, in the 8th inning, you hit a huge home run. So you played a huge role in winning a World Series, and I've talked to guys that have played 15 or 20 years, been All-Stars 6 or 7 times, that would kill to trade careers with you just because of that World Series ring.
Yeah, that's supposedly that's what everybody plays for. It's not true to the case. Okay, I know there's not. I mean, yeah, they would like to win it, but they play for the numbers. They play for the Hall of Fame. They play for the cash, the money. They play, and I think everybody plays a little bit for all those things. But I was playing for that ring, man. It's a whole lot more fun to win. People look at you differently in the world when you're a winner than when you're a loser. And, that was everything to me. It was like mission accomplished. Everything in my life I'd set out for was just accomplished. It felt like the world jumping off of my back at third when I fell to my knees in Atlanta. It was the most unbelievable accomplishment it felt like that I'd ever had. And it was a team thing. It wasn't even because I was 0 for 23, set some kind of record, I think they said, for being hitless in the playoff game because of my injury and nobody knew about, and what's wrong with Kelly. Maybe he just doesn't like these big stages, or, oh no, I was ready to roll. I was like, oh, that was just, man, wow, I can't believe I'm getting the opportunity. But I was half of who I was, and it was for the whole year, it was very, very depressing. It was hard to manage, really hard to manage, because you couldn't talk about it, and there's a lot of other situations involved too that with the management of the Blue Jays and the injury and everything else, and so it was a difficult year. But what a way to get out! What a way to end it! Your career, and if you're going, which you are, that's the way to go.
All right. So, what have you been doing since you've retired? I know that you've done a lot of work for different charitable organizations.
Yeah. Well, we had kind of a, Cito and Gino and all of them. We all had kind of a unwritten rule. Every time I'd thank them for showing me something that they'd learned playing the game of baseball and all the years that they played and coached and shared it with me, I would thank them. And they'd say, no problem, kid. Just make sure you share it, the knowledge with the younger generation. And, so I try to do that as much as possible all over the country, especially in Canada where the weather's not favorable as much. The coaching is not as good because you don't have the weather to play as much up there. And so they need it the most. And I do it down here. I do it, of course, with any of the friends or family or, kids around here. So I'm giving back. I'm doing stuff like that. I do a lot of charity work because there's a lot of good charities out there in need. Just trying to stay busy. I'm a boater, so I get out on my boat, zen out, get on that water, and it's just like in a different world for me being a Pisces, and on the water. And I've been busy lately, actually, with the buddy that's been battling some cancer here in Austin, and they're trying to fix their house up and make it look nice and this and that and blah, blah, blah. So I've been doing some stuff like that. I stay pretty busy. And, of course, I don't know if you heard, but I had a stenosis. My neck had been what took me out of the game in the first place. Stenosis, well, no, that was when I first had it, when I came out of the game. Thank goodness I caught that. It was fixing to sever my spine, my cord, become Christopher Reeve, they said. But this was flattening. My spine was flattening. It was, and it would crimp, and it would flatten, so no fluid was, the spinal tap or anything was going through, so I was losing feeling in my limbs, and it was frightening. And I'm starting to pull out of it. It's been a year, May 5th, been a year since I had they had to go in and open up my column and put some plates and screws to keep it open so that it wouldn't squeeze my spine down. And it's been a recovering period. It's the limbs and arms and stuff. They're still there. They're still working. They still got a little tingling in them and this and that. But anyway, it is what it is, and it's been a slow climb up, but it's climbing up, and it's been pretty consuming for me. So I've been on top of that for at least the last year and a half.
Now, what's the prognosis? Are you going to be 100% after a little while, or is it something you're always going to have to deal with?
Well, they can never tell you you're going to be 100%, and any of that kind of stuff. And I've learned as an athlete that I never look back before the injury. I always look at the time I had the injury to measure my success of healing. And it will always show you a steadily updraft of you're getting better, and that'll keep you out of, being depressed, or it'll give you optimism and show that you're getting healthier, you're getting better, your injury's healing, instead of, man, I'm not the way I was before the injury. You know, that can play mind tricks on you. So I try to stay away from that. But yeah, it's a slow growth, and you know, hey, I'm 56. What can I expect to get better as time goes on at this point, right? I mean, at some point we got to say, well, we're getting older.
Once you get past 40, it's kind of a slow downhill, even if you're completely healthy. So.
That's right, Mike. That's right.
All right, Kelly, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You welcome back whenever you want to come back.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's an honor and a pleasure to do this with you. I appreciate you asking me.
All right, guys, remember you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, soon to be on Spotify also. So make sure you check us out at thegruelingtruth.net. So for Kelly Gruber, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.